Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm here to address Bill 489, which is a bill specifically to address premeditation. When an individual chooses to wear a mask and attempts to, or while committing a crime or attempting to commit a crime, or they are essentially evading justice and escalating the encounter. Masking serves as two primary purposes for the perpetrator. First, intimidation. It dehumanizes the assailant and increases the psychological trauma for the victims. Number two is obstruction. It is a calculated move to hinder law enforcement's ability to use witnesses, techniques, and technology to identify a perpetrator. I find this bill that is very, very balanced. It's not a one-size-fits-all, but gives options to seek justice. It is optional for the police, prosecutor, and judge. They can utilize this for the enhancements that I will list in whole or in part in specific cases. It gives prosecutors a much-needed tool to use at their discretion, depending on the seriousness of the crime. It allows for up to an additional 1 year of imprisonment, enhancement for jail or prison, and up to a $2,500 additional fine when the facts of the case warrant it. It distinguishes between common crime and a crime committed with the specific intent to remain anonymous and unaccountable. I know there was a question previous about religious apparel, and I'm more prepared to answer some questions regarding that if that subject comes back up. There have also been questions regarding intent and being able to prove intent. I would submit to the committee that that is what our criminal justice system does every day. I would remind you that if you don't commit a crime, this will not pertain to you. Only when committing a crime or attempting to commit a crime and victimizing our community members, you should be concerned. Idahoans value transparency and accountability. By passing this bill, we send a clear message. If you use a mask to hide from the law while harming our community, there will be additional consequences. This is a common sense measure to support our victims and our criminal justice system, and serves as a preventative tool as well. I remind the committee that we do have support from the Sheriff's Association, and I would ask the committee to send this bill to the floor with a do pass recommendation. And thank you, and I'm ready for any questions you might have.
Committee questions. Also keep in mind we have a number of people who will testify, so you can also ask questions after those who testify. Okay. Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Representative Hall. Question, does the head coverings in that, does that include scarves or just masks? I'm thinking winters in North Idaho and people wear ski masks or hats, and like where do you draw the line? Because it's pretty broad.
Mr. Chairman. Representative Scott, I think any time that we can prove intent that they were using any kind of methodology to cover their face so that they can commit a crime, this bill would come in place, this law would come into place. I think that our criminal justice system in itself, our law enforcement professionals can work through those issues. Certainly when you're up north and it's cold, you wear masks, you do other things. But here's what I would say, don't commit a crime.
One more follow-up.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Representative Hall. My last question is, so it's any crime, and what I'm concerned about is treating a murder, someone wearing a mask and a murder, they're going to get the same penalty as someone that's wearing a mask and maybe trespassing. So how did you come to the decision that there's no distinction there, because they both can get a year in jail and, what was it, $2,500 fine?
Mr. Chairman. Representative Scott, I think that that's going to be the discretion of the prosecutor asking for it and the judiciary levying those. And I will tell you my experience is they're fairly, they don't utilize enhancements as much as people think that they do. I think that they do a good job of using them when the time is appropriate and the seriousness of the crime. So that's how I would answer that question. Thank you.
Representative Alfieri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I couldn't get the lights to work. Representative, you stated that using a mask in the crime dehumanizes the assailant and causes additional victim trauma. Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, when you are being victimized, I've talked to victims. I spent 12 years as a police officer as well. When you talk to victims, and especially of serious crimes, they are traumatized by that crime. When you are utilizing a mask and hiding your identity, that is just an escalation of that victimization, that trauma that our citizens feel during that perpetration of the crime.
Thank you.
Representative Hostetler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative. While I understand the heart of this piece of legislation, there's some things that concern me. For example, the first thing that comes to mind for me is January 6th, right? A lot of people out there doing what they thought was protesting, disturbing the peace. Some of these things come to mind. We had an administration that went full bore. How would this, for example, if this was kind of in practice, how would that play to some of those people there and have it affected some of the outcomes?
Chairman, Representative Hostetler, I think, again, it just goes to the core. Don't commit a crime and use a mask to hide your identity. Going to the specifics of January 6th, I certainly share some of your feelings regarding what happened that day, but there were specific crimes that were committed that day, wearing disguises and the like, and it certainly could be used for those. But again, it comes down to the discretion of the prosecutor asking for it and the judiciary utilizing it.
Representative Gannon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Representative Hall. And and this may be for subsequent witnesses, but the first question was, is this a misdemeanor or a felony?
Mr. Chairman?
I can clarify if you like also. Go ahead.
Representative Gannon, it's an enhancement along it, whether it's a misdemeanor or a felony.
If I might, Representative Gannon, it is not a new crime.
Just in sentencing?
Just an enhancement to a sentence.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And second question is, and it kind of gets to your example, this could apply to a 19-year-old stealing several dollars worth of merchandise from a store, as well as someone committing a very, very serious crime. Am I reading that correctly?
Mr. Chairman. Representative Gannon, theoretically it could, but I'm here to tell you that we have professionals in these fields. I trust that they would judge these things correctly. And again, I would remind my testimony before that the judiciary rarely uses enhancements as it is. So I would rely on their judgment and their discretion regarding that. I would just have to tell you, as a police officer, I certainly wouldn't ask the prosecutor to ask for the enhancement in that realm. And I know a lot of prosecutors. I can't imagine them asking for that. Know a lot of judges too, and I can't imagine them utilizing it, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Representative Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative, bear with me a second here. I just, as I looked at this, since we looked at it the other day and brought it in, I have some concerns maybe for a different reason. And I do keep hearing that, there's good judgment used. But I can't begin to think of how many times we've come across something that seems to cause a problem in today that was a bill passed in the past. These unintended consequences that follow us down the road with legislation We're watching around the country right now in less than friendly areas where our ICE officers are now being charged with a crime of wearing a mask. Now, we would say, oh, that's never going to happen in Idaho, but I'd also refer us to, over the last week, we've had 2 anti-ICE protests just outside this building. We are in a town that doesn't recognize the laws we pass now. What can we be assured of that this won't be used against our own law enforcement and ICE personnel in the future when this body isn't in control?
Mr. Chairman. Representative Hawkins, I think that's a valid point, and as I reached out to some law enforcement professionals, that was one of the things that they brought up as well. Certainly, if a law enforcement officer uses a mask while perpetrating a crime, this could take place, and it should be utilized in specific cases. But in your case itself, by the way, you're speaking my language. I have always been concerned of unintended consequences, and there is no perfect bill, no perfect law. You can't calculate all the unintended consequences. But I would say that it would be rare. I can't imagine that would happen, because as long as they are performing their duties within the scope of their law enforcement positions, they should be just fine. If they're committing a crime, truly committing a crime, certainly it might be utilized.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative, yeah, but back to the point of, as culture changes, right now we don't see this occurring, but remind you that legal, acting, federal law enforcements are being accused of a crime, even though they're not committing one. So that's where I'm a little concerned here, because in different towns, I realize we're in Idaho and we say that's not going to happen here, but we are seeing the signs in some of our cities, and the one we're sitting in now. And that brings me great concern about something like this.
Thanks, Representative Hawkins. I did not hear a question, so you may respond if you like, but there's no question.
Mr. Chairman, if I could respond. I certainly appreciate your perspective, but remember, they have to be convicted of the crime to have the enhancement. So being accused really doesn't play in here unless they're convicted. Certainly share your concerns about society as a whole and where it drifts back and forth, but you could probably say that with many laws that we have with society and how they might utilize them. I just find that this is a compelling law that can, I hope, prevent crimes. If people know that if they're going to wear a mask and commit a crime, they could have an enhancement. Maybe it can help with groups like Antifa and those type of organizations, so that we can prevent some things and prevent the victimization of our citizens.
Representative Ehart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Hall, or Representative Hall. So I'm also just trying to wrap my head around what this might mean. So I think I understand, as Representative Gannon asked, what you mean by enhancement, and you're hoping that this would prevent somebody from committing a crime. And you happen to mention Antifa. As I understand Antifa, they're not really paying for anything, so no matter what they do, it doesn't seem to matter. Have you taken that into account? They're not accountable for any of their fines. Somebody else is paying for it. And so I don't know if that necessarily, if that really prevents anything. And so my real question in truly trying to understand this is, so you're talking about somebody who committed a crime because they wore a mask and yet they were still captured. So obviously you can't, it doesn't go into effect until you capture them, even though they wore a mask, right? And so it's not preventing somebody who committed a crime from getting caught, because obviously in order for the enhancement, they were captured. Do you see what I'm kind of saying? Could you maybe share thoughts in regards to that, please?
Mr. Chairman. Representative Ehart, I think the prevention is, they know that there can be a further enhancement, whether it's fine and/or imprisonment. And as far as Antifa, if someone else is paying their fine, no one else can pay their sentence in prison or in jail. And could I get a clarification on the second part of your question? Is that okay, Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
That's probably fine. Just in my mind's eye, I'm just trying to think this through as to how, given the fact that a crime had been committed, apparently they're wearing a mask and yet they're still caught. So apparently because they are caught, it didn't really matter that they were wearing a mask, they were still caught. So I guess I'm wondering, are we wanting to remove the mask because we can't apprehend those who wore a mask?
Mr. Chairman, good points. I think what it's all about when I talk about prevention, it's about the seriousness of the crime, it's the seriousness of the enhancement along with the original sentence and fines that can be levied, and that's the prevention piece. So certainly, you can't utilize this unless you apprehend someone that committed a crime, and then you can utilize this. But the seriousness of the fines and imprisonment many times has been prevention.
All right, let's move along and have our witnesses. Representative, you're welcome to take your seat while we have the witnesses, as we have several, and then we'll call you back up to conclude.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, those who are going to testify, remember, sometimes things get emotional in here, and that is okay unless the emotions get out of control. Keep emotions under control. Do not impugn the motives of anyone who is talking one side of the bill or the other. Everyone's here with good intent to try to do what's best for our state. And I have 9 people signed up, I believe. And the first one up is Jason Kimball. You'd state, and when you come up, state your name and your district, if you know it, or for your town from where you are. And you have up to 3 minutes to testify.
Mr. Chairman,
when you're ready.
Mr. Chairman, committee, I'm Jason Kimball. I'm with the Nampa Police Department from Nampa, Idaho. Okay. In law enforcement, our primary goals are public safety and pursuit of justice. Currently, we're seeing a troubling trend where individuals use masks, hoods, or facial disguises that embolden their criminal behavior. They do this for 2 reasons: to intimidate their victims and to evade identification by law enforcement or forensic technologies. This bill addresses those tactics head on. Here's why the legislation helps keep our community safe. This legislation. When criminals cover their face, they believe they are invisible. This sense of obscurity often leads to an escalation of violence or property damage that may not have occurred otherwise. By creating a specific sentencing enhancement, we send a clear message that Idaho will not tolerate the use of disguises as a shield of criminal activity. This bill provides a practical tool for our prosecutors. It recognizes that committing a crime while masked is an aggravated factor to increase the trauma to victims and the difficulty of investigation. A masked robber or an assault inherently is more calculated and threatening than one committed openly. It is important to note this bill does not criminalize the act of wearing a mask in public for health, religious, or personal reasons. It strictly targets those who use a disguise while committing or attempting to commit a criminal offense. By passing this, you help send a message to the criminal elements in our community that we won't tolerate hiding from justice. I stand for the questions.
Are there any questions? Representative Alfieri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And is it officer or lieutenant or?
Mr. Chairman, Representative is Lieutenant Kimball.
Lieutenant, thank you. I wanted to ask you about forensic technology. You mentioned that the use of a mask is preventing you from using some forensic technology and identifying individuals. Did I get that right? Is that right?
Yes, sir. When I say forensic technology, it specifically refers to like camera or surveillance or those type of forensic tools that we use in law enforcement.
Just a quick follow.
Go ahead.
So the mask on the individual is preventing you from finding people because you can't identify them because they're using a mask. Is that where we are?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And as a reminder, we're starting up a new year. Speak through the chairman. So if they say, Mr. Chairman, get my nod. Keeps things level. Okay. Thank you, Lieutenant. Oh, we had one more. Sorry. Representative Pohanka, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Lieutenant Kimball, just a quick question. Maybe in the past 12 months, how many crimes have been committed wearing a mask? If
Mr. Chairman, to quantify that number, I couldn't throughout the entire state. In our community,
or your community, yes, sir.
it's on a very routine basis, and I'll use the example that we see it most commonly, and what we see is traveling crews come through our community. Usually starts in a different state, and they travel a circuit, and they come to our community, and they hide their identity so they can't be seen. When they hit for example, I'm in Nampa, and say they're coming from the west going east, then they go to Meridian, then they go to Boise, then they go to Twin Falls, Pocatello, and what they're doing is they're hiding their identity with a mask. And with COVID on the recent events we've had, it's common to wear a mask to prevent for health reasons, but they're doing it for the purpose of furthering their criminal activity. So to quantify the exact number, I couldn't do that, but it's frequent and routine.
Representative Mathias.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lieutenant Kimball, do you think this bill could be improved if it made that distinction clear that this bill targets people who wear face coverings for the specific purpose of obstructing rather than people who are merely wearing them for religious reasons or health reasons?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I believe this, the way I read this already, it does that. It says it's only if a criminal activity occurred and they've been convicted of that crime, and then the sentencing is at the end of that. So there's already a crime that's committed, and they wore the mask with the intent to hide their identity. I think when I read it, that's what I understand it to be.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lieutenant Kimball, I'm curious if the city of Nampa, do they use facial recognition during events, protests and stuff like that? I mean, are they running faces or even from traffic cams so they can kind of ID criminals or traffickers or whatever in the area?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Scott, absolutely not. We do not use facial recognition to identify anybody when we're doing any type of investigation.
Follow up?
Go ahead.
So if you're not doing facial recognition and you catch a criminal, I mean, I guess why couldn't you do this after the fact? Actually, just stop on that. I'll just wait and hear more of the testimony.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, and Representative Scott, when he spoke earlier of facial recognition, that's like, I'm picturing in my mind from Ring cameras or community cameras that might be there. All right. We're finished? Oh, there's another, I'm sorry, Representative Hotsteller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your patience and service, sir. Just kind of piggybacking off of Representative Scott's question, are you seeing in the changing times that we're in a growing need or desire for surveillance capacities or abilities?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, if I understand your question, does it enhance law enforcement's ability to catch criminals with additional surveillance technology? The answer is yes. If we have it in public settings, or as even the chairman represented here today, people frequently have it on their personal homes, and that type of surveillance, your Ring doorbell, your outer perimeter, all that, has definitely assisted law enforcement with catching criminals in the act of crime. I'll use a quick example of which happens frequently in most communities. If you have people that are going around in the nighttime and burglarizing vehicles, it's not uncommon to see them wearing masks, but we're catching those people more frequently because of technology like cameras on personal households, or even some vehicles have it that we can go back and access that camera and then catch them later and then identify them through that.
Okay. Not seeing any more red lights, not looking. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to have Daniel Murphy. I'm simply going in order of how people signed up. Mr. Murphy, welcome back to the committee. Good to see you.
Pardon me.
Welcome back to committee. It's good to see you. Start when you're ready.
Good to see you. It's good to see everyone, and thank you, Mr. Chairman and the committee here. There was a lot of misinformation out there
First,
regarding
give
this
us your name,
legislation.
even though I've stated it.
What do I need?
Your name and where you live. Your name and where you live.
Okay. Excuse me, sorry about that. Start over. I'm Daniel Murphy out of Boise, Idaho. Thanks, Chairman and committee again. There are a lot of misinformation about this regarding this legislation. One comment on Facebook has called it a police state bill. Since it's public knowledge, I can say that others have parroted the slogan, and I think they're wrong. The bill is not about penalizing anyone just for wearing a mask. When a perpetrator of a crime decides to hide their identity, it tells me there is premeditation, and with others, a conspiracy to commit a criminal act. This legislation tells Idahoans we're enhancing penalties on lawbreakers who attempt criminal activity using a mask or similar face-hiding device. Committee member and Representative Scott asked a valid question, and who was quoted in the press. Her quote was, "What would happen if someone committed a crime while wearing a religious head covering, and what to do if an individual purposely wears a religious head covering to potentially get around the bill?" Our First Amendment says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. It does not say someone can use a covering to get around the First Amendment by committing a crime with some sort of so-called religious face covering. So respectfully, the law needs to make sure that it's for every citizen, whether a certain segment of the population might use a face covering around town. There are numerous sentencing enhancements when a perpetrator commits a crime, which may include use of firearm, targeting a vulnerable member of the population, having prior convictions, gang affiliation, committing a crime near a school, to name a few. I support this piece of legislation because I want Idaho to enhance penalties, making our state more crime-free and the most law-abiding state in the union. To answer Representative Hawkins' questions, usually when a perpetrator wants to commit a crime and he wants to wear a mask, he's not known, okay? That's why he's wearing a mask. But in case of the ICE law enforcement officer, if for some rare instances he commits a crime against the public, other law enforcement and other ICE members would know who that person is. I think the mask on ICE members are to protect their identities, because there are people in society who want to take these people out for doing their jobs. And with that, I'm very happy to have you listen to me. Questions?
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Murphy, a quick question. So if you lived in a city where, let's just say the leaning was anti-ICE with the police department, the mayor has a police chief that is anti-ICE, and they make it, and they say they're criminals for being in their their city, how would you stop a city police officer from arresting an ICE member?
Well, again, this is an enhanced.
Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Chairman and Representative Scott, I think this is an enhancement. So yesterday there was people at the protest with masks on. They weren't doing anything wrong. That don't affect them. If a protester bops somebody over the head and they get arrested, that could, where this bill would come in. It's an enhancement. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Representative Scott.
No further questions. Thank you very much for your time and testimony.
Thank you.
Next up, Andy Creech. Welcome back, Sheriff.
Thank you, Chairman, Committee. My name's Andy Creech. I'm the sheriff in Payette County. The Sheriff's Association is still evaluating our positions on all bills. We'll have those out next week. So I'm here testifying today as myself. And I really want to testify in support of this bill and just say that when people are committing crimes and they're using some kind of covering to disguise who they are, they're doing that purposely to make it harder for law enforcement to identify them and hold them accountable for the crimes. This bill is simply just adding an enhancement to the sentencing to help discourage that behavior. And with that, I'm in support of this bill.
And we have another member of law enforcement if you have questions.
Just a quick question. Thank
Representative
you.
Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just curious, are you on duty right now or no?
Chairman Skog and Representative Scott, I am on duty.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Yep, thank you.
Next up is, we're going to go Sarah Lawal, and I think she's remote, so that'll take me a second. Oh, you're here. Okay, good. Come on forward. You know the drill. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I am the Reverend Sarah Lawal. I'm here today on behalf of my faith and my church community, the Boise Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, speaking against this bill. 2 weeks ago, 37-year-old mother Renee Nicole Good was shot and killed in her car by a masked federal agent. And we're seeing these kinds of constitutional and human rights violations happen across the country with alarming frequency. Many of those agents and law enforcement officers are wearing masks, some of them in plain clothes, unidentifiable. My concern in this bill is not with punishing violent plans or actions. My concern is the breadth and the vagueness of how mask is defined and whether it could be applied unevenly or even weaponized, intentionally or not, against peaceful civilians exercising their freedom of conscience and peaceful assembly. How would this law interact with federal officers or any law enforcement wearing masks during operations, like those involved in Renee Good's death? I worry this bill would only criminalize only the powerless, while those with federal authority continue to act without the same constraints or accountability. A law must apply equally to the governed and to those who govern. I've been sent many pictures in the last several weeks of law enforcement agents here in Idaho fully masked. If this bill is based on discretion of the prosecutor and law enforcement without specific legal parameters to define the offense, what ensures us that every defendant will be treated fairly and equally? History teaches us that vague laws are rarely enforced evenly and equally, and almost always harm those with the least power. And masks, as we've heard today, can represent many things: protection, medical necessity, religious practice, or safety from retaliation. As people of faith, we're called to uphold human dignity and justice. We're called to shepherd the vulnerable and speak up when laws or policies risk harming the very people we serve. In Minneapolis this Friday, hundreds of faith leaders are gathering to call for peace, human dignity, and meaningful accountability in how all our officers, federal or local, interact with the public, especially our most vulnerable citizens and people living in our states. I want us to be cautious to not pass laws that could negatively impact the constitutional right to peaceful assembly or threaten worshipers who wear religious coverings or those who wear medical masks or protective gear. I urge this committee to reconsider the language of this bill and to vote no. Thank you.
Are there any questions? All right. Thank you for taking the time to come into our committee. Next up, Daryl Pettinger. It's been a while. Welcome back.
Thank you, Chairman. For the record, just to correct, it is David Pettinger, District 14, but I'll take Daryl. Daryl works for today.
Oh.
So, committee, I was hoping that I was going to get an opportunity to come in today to address HB 96 and bring some serious penalties towards the city of Boise and Mayor Lauren McLean, but I am not here to speak upon that. I don't know if the legislature has yet taken that up. I am here talking about the origin of H497, or 489, pardon me. Now, the origin of this is what concerns me. On this committee, We have some great foreign government hawks. We have Representative Hill, who's got his eyes on China. We have Representative Scott that's got her eyes on Qatar. Well, I am concerned because it looks that the genesis and origin of this bill is Israel. And what I want to know is why two members in this committee in the audience right now have dual citizenship of America and Israel and are spearheading this legislation into this committee.
David, stop.
Yes.
I don't know of anybody here that has dual citizenship with Israel. So you're impugning the character of committee members. Stop.
Not on the committee, it's in the audience. It's two members from the Idaho Israel Alliance, that's now the Idaho Jewish Alliance.
Don't impugn people who haven't even testified on this bill. Get to your point, please.
Okay, so through public records request, it was shown that this alliance had this as a priority. And so that was recently through legislative service offices that came out through their newsletter that they wanted this legislation moved. And in addition to this legislation, they also wanted anti-Semitism legislation moved. So as we look through the looking glass and you look into the future that we're speaking of, you might recall COVID and Ammon Bundy being arrested under trespassing laws that now Senator Zito and also Representative Boyle passed. And those were great laws at the time, but people couldn't see through the looking glass that when the government closed institutions, that citizens would be arrested under the new trespassing law. My concern is once we criminalize speech, once we criminalize the statement through the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, when I say you are Israel first instead of America first, I am now committing malicious harassment, which is 5 years. You put this add-on of another year and another $2,500, that's now 6 years. You will have to tell me, because some of you know the criminal legislation better than I do, but I believe that in some states, maybe even Idaho, you can kill someone and be out in 7 years. For the use of free speech looking forward as one of their priorities, they wanted to combine this with the anti-Semitism legislation. And I will note that Tom Yalquist is on their board. Tom Yalquist, who spends much time with Mayor McLean, sits on their board. What are we doing?
David, you're attacking other things not related to the bill. I know you think they are, but get to the point. You're running out of time. You're out of time. One last sentence.
Any questions?
All right. Thank you for taking the time. Anthony Oxen. Welcome back when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee. My name is Anthony Oxen. I live in Nampa, District 10. The reason I came down here for this is I am aware that crimes have consequences, and the consequences are clearly stated on here. When crimes have consequences and people commit crimes, and they have the consequences that may have enhancements on them. A gentleman earlier testified there's gun enhancements. There's a number of other enhancements on here. It is, helping people defer their behavior, and if not, it's punishment for their, and I am all for this on here. Wearing a mask, apparently, I actually have read the legislation on here. Wearing a mask, some people are confused because they think wearing a mask is a crime. No. Doing a crime and wearing a mask is going to get you an enhancement of a year and $2,500 up to $2,500 fine. And that is, again, based upon prosecuting attorneys and the judges deciding that that would be appropriate for a person who commits a crime. There's people are testifying here that, wearing a face covering is a crime. No. Wearing a face covering is not a crime. Doing a crime and wearing a face covering hopefully will have additional enhancements on here. I'll stand for questions.
No questions. Thank you for taking the time to come in. Next up, Moshe Herman. Is this your first time testifying in a committee?
Yes, sir, it is. Thank
Okay,
you.
welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Skog, and esteemed members of this committee for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Moshe Herman, and I'm a lifelong Idahoan. I was raised here. I graduated from Centennial High School and Boise State University, and my wife also graduated from Boise State University. In fact, we met there. Our children were born here. Idaho is our home, and Idaho is where we are raising our family and deepening our roots. And I'm here today as a parent and a community leader who cares deeply about all Idahoans, the safety of it. House Bill 489 is not about politics. House Bill 489 is not about speech. It's about public safety, and it's about accountability. And when someone commits a crime while deliberately concealing their identity, that decision matters. Masking during a crime is not incidental. It's a conscious choice to evade identification, to intimidate victims and witnesses, and make law enforcement's job more difficult. This bill recognizes that added level of intent and provides judges and prosecutors, at their discretion, an additional tool to act appropriately. This legislation does not affect everyday face coverings. It does not restrict or even mention lawful protest or peaceful assembly. It applies only after a crime has been committed and where a mask is used to hide their identity and intimidate the public. As a parent of two 6-year-olds, this issue is very personal. When my children go to school, attend community events, and walk through our cities, I want them, along with every Idaho family, to feel safe. Law-abiding citizens should not feel threatened by criminals exploiting anonymity to avoid accountability. One of the many things that makes Idaho great is that we've always valued our personal responsibility, accountability, and the rule of law. House Bill 489 reflects those values and aligns with laws already in place in many other states. This bill supports law enforcement. This bill strengthens prosecution of serious crimes, and once again, it helps keep Idaho safe. I respectfully urge all of you to support House Bill 489. Thank you, and I stand for questions. And also, as a side note, I wanted to tell this gentleman, I happen to be one of those people who's a dual U.S.-Israeli citizen. So anyway, I stand for questions.
Any questions? Representative Rubel.
Thank you. Just for a comment to the testifier. Thank you, Chairman Skog, and thank you for testifying. And I'm a little disturbed by what felt like a somewhat anti-Semitic turn, and I want to apologize if that upset you in any way. This is a totally distinct issue, and I hope that this does not get muddled with other topics that should not be mixed in with this issue at all.
Well, Chair, Representative Rubel, I thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Any other questions of the presenter? No questions. Thank you for your time and coming down here.
Thank you all so much.
Next up is Dan Berger. When you're ready.
Thank you, Chairman Skog, committee members, for allowing me to speak today. It's truly humbling. My name is Dan Berger. I'm an Ada County resident, District 19 to be specific, and I'm an entrepreneur who has contributed a lot to Idaho's economy through creating communities, making local investments, and building several businesses in our state, including the first hotel in the North End opening next month. I want to tell you about a bill in California, SB 627. It's also called the No Secret Police Act, and it prohibits law enforcement from wearing masks. This bill, H489, does the opposite. It's meant to protect law enforcement by providing an enhancement to prosecute crimes committing while wearing a mask. This is not only a matter of common sense. There are many reasons to support it. 1, perps cannot hide behind a veil. When they do, it makes it more difficult to identify them. The bill helps law enforcement be more effective at their jobs. 2, when someone commits a crime while masked, it's not just concealment. It's a deliberate tactic to scare witnesses, something that hasn't been spoken about before in the previous testimony, and make sure victims stay quiet. An enhancement act acts as a deterrent while protecting the public. 3, this is not a parking ticket. It's about serious crimes such as gang violence, armed robberies, and violent protesters. In closing, this bill is simple, common sense step to strengthen public safety and support law enforcement. Similar legislation is passed in 23 states, including the District of Columbia, Florida, North Carolina, Arizona, Oklahoma, Ohio, and if I kept naming those states, I wouldn't have much time remaining. It doesn't target lawful expression or everyday face coverings, nor does it infringe on freedom of speech or assembly. It targets scenarios where there's clear intent to commit a crime, which many prosecutors I've spoken to prior to this testimony have agreed to, while hiding behind a mask to evade identification, intimidate victims, and frustrate prosecution. In closing, by adding a clear enhancement for masked criminal conduct, we A, protect law enforcement, B, give prosecutors a bigger hammer, and C, remove a tactical advantage from perpetrators. I urge you to support this bill, and I stand for questions in front of this esteemed committee.
Any questions of Mr. Berger? All right, no questions. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Chair and representatives.
The last person on the list is Robert Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My first time testifying. This is off the cuff. I'm a Robert Brown. I'm an Idahoan. I live in Boise. I'm Catholic. My wife is Jewish. Christmas can be interesting. We do appreciate, there are those who do not like Israel, who do not like Jews. We completely understand that, and we're open to the dialogue and discussions and things like that. There have been several anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, whatever you want to call it, protests here in Boise, and I kind of take affront to that. I really don't want to see my wife eradicated or the center of my religion, Israel. That is where my religion started. That's where it's founded. I'm very, I guess, supportive of the individuals who are actually keeping some of these places intact and accessible to people like me. So I've actually been able to visit some of the sites where I believe Christ was buried. I've been able to attend some of the churches there. But we've attended some of these, I guess, protests as counter-protests. And we noticed that the ones who were most aggressive were the ones that were hiding behind the masks. I'm not one to I guess, avoid, well, let me put it another way. I didn't appreciate it. The ones who acted out most aggressively to us were the ones that were hiding behind the masks. When we left the rallies, the ones who ended up following us were the ones who were wearing the masks. And so it was difficult for me to try to even report this because I couldn't see who they were. I felt ridiculous to try to call it in and say, well, an individual who was wearing a mask, who I can't identify, was following us. So that was kind of my disappointment with, I guess, allowing that to happen. And I do support this enhancement. I do think it could help. I wasn't able to actually report it because I felt like it wouldn't have done any good. There was no laws other than the following and harassment being done. But that was it. That was my, I guess, statement in support of. Thank you.
Any questions? Mr. Brown, Chairman has a question.
Yes.
Did that happen in Idaho, the incident?
Yes. Yes, it was actually just out in front of the Capitol. We were two lone individuals standing out with Israeli American flags. Again, I'm Catholic. That's the foundation of my religion, and we're standing out there with Israeli American flags when the pro-Hamas groups came around the corner. As soon as they rounded the corner, they began their chants, the call to end Israel from the river to the sea. As soon as they saw us, they started that. And it was about 200 individuals, I think, that, of course, used language and some colorful, I guess, conversation towards us, which I can appreciate, I can understand. Everybody has their views. It was the ones who were wearing the masks that seemed to act out more. They were more aggressive. They didn't seem to be really in support of that. They were more against us. And I think that's where I'm hoping for more of an enhancement to try to kind of rein that in. Thank you.
Representative Pohanka.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Brown, do you have any children, did you say?
I'm sorry?
Do you have any children?
Mr. Chairman? Yes.
Were they with you at the time or no?
No. We're empty nesters now, so
okay.
We get around a little bit more, and we do things we probably wouldn't have done with the children around. Yeah.
I would imagine it would probably unsettle them, to say the least.
It was interesting.
Okay. No other questions. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you,
and
Mr.
being on
Chairman.
our committee.
Thank you,
I
committee.
see one man, Miguel De Luna, who did tell me he wanted to testify before we started. And I see somebody else standing up. So I'll have Miguel come up.
I did sign up electronically, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry, Mr. De Luna, it didn't show up on my computer. We're still working out the bugs, which we seem to do at the start of every session, but you did make me aware you wanted to testify. So go ahead, you have 3 minutes. Miguel De Luna.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, committee members, my name is Miguel De Luna. I live in District 14. I am representing myself. I am here today as a former law enforcement officer, 35 years of experience, to testify in favor of House Bill 489. The bill is straightforward and common sense. When someone commits a crime while wearing a mask, they are doing so intentionally to conceal their identity and to avoid accountability. That deliberate act or choice increases fear for victims and makes it more difficult for law enforcement to identify and apprehend offenders. House Bill 489 does not criminalize wearing a mask. It applies only when a mask is used during a commission of a crime, such as rape, robbery, rioting. In those cases, the mask becomes a tool that enables the crime, much like a weapon or other aggravating factors. This legislation stands with victims, supports law enforcement, and reinforces the principle that those who deliberately hide their identity to commit violent, dangerous acts should face enhanced consequences. Some of you may be aware that on Facebook there is a Treasure Valley Crime and Community page. A lot of times you'll see law enforcement and sometimes individuals that'll show a photo of a person of interest or a person that's wanted. In most of the cases, they're not wearing a mask, but they're quickly identified and apprehended. Those wearing masks makes it a lot more difficult for law enforcement. In my years as a law enforcement officer, I've worked property crimes and also the Special Victims Unit, where I've handled probably a dozen of sex crimes. In some of those cases, the perpetrator used masks, which makes it very difficult, honestly. In some cases, very, very difficult, even with the technology that we have. And thank God that we have DNA, which solves a lot of crimes. But still, it makes a lot of manpower, a lot of time and effort to apprehend some of these individuals. I respectfully ask you to support House Bill 489, and I stand for questions.
No questions. Thank you for taking the time. Oh, I did not see your light, Representative Scott. I should just call on you each time.
I haven't had that many questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Miguel, thanks for your service. And my question as retired law enforcement officer, maybe you can explain to me the difference between committing a crime or attempting to commit a criminal offense. Can you tell me the difference between the two of those?
Sure. Mr. Chairman, Representative Scott. So the committing the crime is actually performing the act. Okay. And the second part was with what? I'm sorry.
Attempting to commit a criminal offense.
Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, Representative, so attempting to commit the offense. So you haven't quite committed the act, but is it a crime? To me, it's not a crime until you actually do the act. Strong arm robbery would be a good one. Possibly would be somebody wearing a mask going up to somebody, to a victim, and demanding that they give up their phone, wallet, their money, and the person that actually hands it over. So I don't know. Hopefully that answers the question.
A quick follow-up.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Miguel. So the way the bill's written, it says they violate this law if they commit a crime or if they are committing a crime wearing the mask or attempting to commit a criminal offense. So if someone was wearing a mask and maybe starting to break into a car but hadn't quite, that would be covered under this bill because they are attempting to do a criminal act. Would that be, would you consider that a crime?
Well, if you're breaking it, Mr. Chairman, Representative, if you're breaking into a car and you cause damage to it, then you've committed a crime, whether it's, vandalism or actually entering the vehicle. So, but to be honest with you, I think maybe the authors of the bill would probably be the best to give you the best answer on that.
Okay, thank you.
But thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I know I have one other gentleman, just a moment. Representative Scott, I'm a former prosecutor. Representative Schertz says all the crimes, if you attempt it, there's the crime of attempted burglary, attempted murder. Those crimes still have to be proven before you could bring in any enhancement. Okay. Sir, you want to testify, I can tell. So
I'm just chomping at the bit.
welcome to committee. 3 minutes.
Thank you, sir. All right. My name, Mr. Chairman, esteemed members of the committee, my name is Mark Rich, and I live in Boise. My wife and I have pastored the Bridge Messianic Fellowship in Meridian for the past 10 years, and I'm an ordained minister. I'm a born and raised Idaho native, and I'm here in support of House Bill 489. When someone commits a crime while concealing their identity, they're not just breaking the law, they're escalating the threat. A masked offender psychologically wounds their victim more deeply, is harder to identify, is more likely to be emboldened, and more likely to embolden others. For people gathered to worship, this matters profoundly. Houses of worship depend on openness and trust. Masked intimidation turns a sanctuary into a target. U.S. history shows exactly how identity concealment has been used to terrorize faith communities. In Pensacola in 1923, reports described mothers trying to quiet their frightened children as 12 robed persons, KKK Klansmen, marched into a church in the midst of a service. More recently, masked violent occurrences have been reported in Chicago, Woodmere, New York, and Bloomfield, New Jersey. Just this month, in Jackson, Mississippi, a masked and hooded man poured gas into a synagogue and lit it on fire. These instances exclude Antifa and BLM riots with masked assailants, which are common knowledge. Concealing one's identity is a common tactic to increase the terror level caused to victims throughout our nation's history. Concealment amplifies fear, strips away accountability, and makes even sacred spaces easier to intimidate. The core concept of this bill is not unique. Courts across the nation have long held masking while perpetrating a crime as an aggravation. Since at least 1923, other states have enacted laws which escalate charges or enhance penalties for criminals who obscure their identities while committing a crime. This is due both to increased fear on the part of the victim and also because, quote, the effects of these masks prevent identification and detection. It's time Idaho sides with criminal victims and not coddling perpetrators. HB 489 is targeted and straightforward. It does not criminalize speech. It does not punish peaceful protests. It only applies when a person is convicted of committing a criminal offense, wearing a mask, or otherwise obscuring their identity. The enhancement penalty only applies upon conviction, which means merely suspecting someone of a crime does not somehow invoke the penalties of this bill. This is an important distinction. Idaho is not debating whether someone can wear a mask at a rally in winter weather or for health or religious reasons. This bill addresses one narrow choice: committing a crime while intentionally making yourself harder to identify. We've seen this act many times before. We should learn from the past and follow the lead of other states. In a free society, we protect the right to speak, the right to worship in peace, and the right to live one's life free of undue fear and intimidation. HB 489 helps ensure that those who choose intimidation and lawlessness do not get an anonymity discount. I respectfully ask you to support HB 489. I stand for any questions.
Any questions? Pastor, would you spell your name so my clerk can get it down in the record?
Yes, Mark, M-A-R-K, Rich, R-I-C-H.
Pretty easy. No questions? Thank you very much for coming down to our committee. You're welcome anytime. That concludes our testimony on this bill. Representative Hall, would you return to the center of the stage here? First, if you have questions of Representative Hall, let's complete any questions, then we'll go into discussion. Any questions? Representative Hostetler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative. Listening to all these testimonies, thank you once again for that. There's invoking arguments on both sides. I heard the word intent come up quite a bit, intentionally wearing and with the intent. Can you point that to me in the bill anywhere? Is the word intentionally or intent in this bill? Have I skipped over it?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, I don't find that either, but that's the basis of law, that there's an intent to commit the violation. So it's not specifically spelled out intent. No, sir.
Representative Mathias.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Hall, I want to ask a similar question in a different way. Someone mentioned that this law has passed in a variety of other states, so I went and looked, and they all seem to have some variation of the following statement involved. That it's, if you're going to conceal your face in an attempt to, quote, conceal your identity during the commission of a crime, that seems to be what distinguishes these acts from people who, in the normal course of life, wear masks or coverings and might commit a crime. I was persuaded by the Reverend that when we leave vagary in statute, people who have the least amount of power tend to be disproportionately impacted. Why do you think it's okay to leave out the language requiring someone to have covered their face with the intention to avoid detection? Because that's no different than using the cover of darkness to avoid detection, to thwart apprehension. That seems to be an important element. Why is that not included in our bill, but it's included in other states?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, I don't have a clear answer for you there on why we intended not to put that in there. It's just clear to me in reading this bill that is evident within the bill that you have to have intent. I guess that's the best way I can answer that, sir.
All right, there are no further questions.
I have one question.
Oh, there is. Representative Gannon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Representative Hall. So, in listening to all the testimony, I heard about arson and violent assaults and by people that were perpetrated by criminals with masks. Did you consider in putting in the bill that it would only apply to felony convictions, as opposed to, say, somebody who's disturbing the peace, loud noise, trespassing, those kinds of things, and which would, I think, address many of the concerns regarding speech and conduct that have been discussed by those who had a different view.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Gannon did not consider putting that specific language in there. I'm giving that to the discretion of law enforcement, the prosecutors, and the judiciary. Again, what I have found is the judiciary doesn't generally use enhancements on very rare occasions. I like to have that ability in this law so that it not only deters folks from committing crimes and intentionally covering their faces to get away with the crime, but to give that option to our judiciary. I think that's clear to me.
Okay, no further questions. Now it's time for discussion or action on this bill. Go ahead and take your seat.
Thank you, sir.
Representative Hill.
Mr. Chairman, for a motion.
Go ahead. The motion is always
I
in
move
order.
to send House Bill 489 to the floor with a due pass recommendation and with a comment.
Go ahead.
I think wearing a mask when committing a crime is to intimidate with the intent to conceal their identity. I think this is totally appropriate. I'm going to vote yes on this for this bill.
Right. Representative Hostetler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for a comment. These are the hard bills. There's no black and white, really. There's invoking, really, arguments on both sides, and a lot of the times removing the emotion and trying to implement some objectivity and looking forward towards unintended consequences and some of the nuanced languages of attempting and the lack of intent and hoodie, face covering. These things just, I have to once again hearken back to, we talked about Antifa quite a bit through this. I mentioned J6. Antifa people didn't pay their fines. They got out the next day, bailed out, sometimes 2 days maybe. We still have J6ers in jail because of overzealous police and the heightened climate and the administration that was in there. I worry about the unintended consequences. Philosophically, I love this bill, but I am just worried down the road what can happen when the climate changes again. And so I'm going to have to vote no on this.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to make a substitute motion to send, House Bill 489 to the amending order, and I'd like to share those reasons.
Go ahead.
So my concern with this bill is it's too vague. It's just, we're giving a ton of discretion to prosecutors and law enforcement. And when we as a legislature do not give direction to what we want to see and how we want to see it, it's no different than advocating our authority to write administrative rules. It's no different. And we're dealing with this, we've dealt with this all summer with our judges in some law for custody battles that we've never really clarified what we want as a legislature. What we have done is we've put a lot of criminal penalties into the law. I think I was up to 82 crimes in Idaho. And I think all those crimes are at different levels. You know, you have someone trespassing, and then you have someone performing rape or murder on someone. And I think there's different levels of crime. Unfortunately, this piece of legislation treats every single crime the same. Not only committing, but attempting to commit a criminal offense. So you have the same penalty for someone with a vicious rape to get an enhanced penalty if they wear a mask, which I think they probably should get an enhanced penalty. And the same as if you have a bunch of kids, 18 years old, trespassing. Now, I understand that the judges or the prosecutors and the police can have discretion, but I just think we should be clearer in our intent as lawmakers on what we want to see. And if you, if you just look through all those crimes, every one of those crimes, like 82 of them that I got up to, every one of those could be enhanced. Now, I'm not saying they would abuse that authority, but I think we as legislators have a bigger picture. We're not just enforcing laws. We're looking at all the branches of government. We're funding government. We're funding our prisons. If you get an overzealous police officer that maybe he knows there's some bad kids and he wants to kind of scare them and give them some extra penalties, or they spend extra time in jail, well, we know what our prisons are full. We know that we're sending prisoners out of this state because we can't afford to house them in our state. We don't have enough room for them. And so I just am concerned that this is too broad. Let's just see real quick. I had a couple more points. And the gentleman that spoke about his 2 6-year-olds, and I was thinking, could there be a crime that 2 6-year-olds out on the playground wearing ski masks maybe grab someone in a fight? It's called assault or bullying another person. They get in a fight on the playground. That could give them an enhanced penalty. So that's kind of one of the lowest crimes I see out there, up to the most severe of murder and rape. And I just think if we would put more clarity in this, I would feel more comfortable with it. And so for that, that's why I did the substitute motion. It's not that I don't like your idea, and I understand where you're coming from, but I just think we need to give a little bit more direction and not give so much discretion that anything can go. And depending, as some have brought up, you get different sheriffs in, you get different city police officers in, and you can apply this law unequally, pretty much unequally if you'd like. And watching what's happening across the nation in some of our cities, especially in New York right now, where over 51% of law enforcement is now under a certain persuasion, that could be a huge issue with a law like this. And Idaho's not exempt. With the growth we've had, we're just not exempt from turning into other states. So for that, I'm going to, that's why I made the motion.
Thank you. Representative Alfieri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Some comment. First of all, about laws being used improperly. As we've seen over the last few years, any law can be used improperly. You can, I'm told that if you're a good prosecutor, you can indict a ham sandwich. So I don't think that's a good argument to not proceed with this law. But I want to go to the core of this, and that is, I think, the core is the question is, why would anybody wear a mask? Well, you wear a mask to conceal your identity. And the reason that you want to conceal your identity is because you know in your heart that what you're doing is wrong. Whether it is legally wrong or morally wrong, you know that the act that you're about to commit is wrong. So you don't want to be identified, and that's why you put a mask on. So we need to have something that addresses that, and this law addresses that.
Representative Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just clarity, are we in discussion about the new motion or?
Well, I haven't been clear. We should be discussing, we were going to discuss the bill, and then we got some motions out. So I'd still like to discuss the bill overall and the motion if you like.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for some clarification from my point of view, there's been a lot of different things we've heard in the committee. I heard that this will protect police officers. I don't see a connection there at all. We can outlaw anything we want, doesn't protect anybody because bad people use bad things all the time. And also the connection to try to connect this law to a religious sect of people is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard. I see nothing in this bill connecting it to any of that. I just want to make that clear from my point of view. But I will say, and I will contend with the unintended consequences of these bills being used in the future, not just this one, other ones we do. We had testimony in this committee today that referred to our ICE federal agents enacting the law, serving the people of America faithfully and truthfully, referred to them as the criminal side here. So when I said earlier that, we think that these things can't happen in Idaho, yes, they can. It won't be long before, if certain cities turn certain ways, these things can be used against the people trying to protect and serve the U.S. population and us as citizens here in Idaho. And for that reason alone, I struggle with this bill greatly.
Thank you. Representative Ehart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple thoughts. I appreciate what Representative Hawkins says because I am feeling the same way with the language of the bill. Taking it a step farther, when we across the states decided to basically add the idea that if a crime was committed, there is a hate crime. And then all of a sudden we have hate crime language. And I'm like, but isn't a crime, by virtue of the fact that it's a crime, hateful? And then it seemed like we started to convolute things. Well, that was a hate crime, but that's not a hate crime. All crime to me is hateful. And so I kind of worry about that. The other thing is I really started thinking about this and kind of the questioning that I had when it comes to crime. I mean, yeah, I think bank robberies throughout time, crimes that have been committed, people have tried to mask themselves. So that we have a history of that. I personally think the larger problem, okay, now hear me out though, the larger problem is now everyone in a protest where maybe they're not necessarily committing a crime, but they're trying to intimidate, they're all wearing masks. I think that's even more intimidating. So what are we going to do? Prohibit masks altogether in protests? And that just simply won't work. I'm not even sure if sending this to, the amending order will work, but the longer I've listened, I mean, it's just, I'm having a hard time seeing how this will be as beneficial as our police officers think that it will be. I wish it would, but I can't quite make that connect right there. So, as of right now, I don't feel like I can support this.
Representative Schertz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to touch first, I guess, on our what is an enhancement. I think it's kind of gotten lost on what that actually means. And it's been mentioned many times that it's not a crime. It definitely isn't a crime. You couldn't just allege this one mask violation in and of itself. But what effectively happens when you have an enhancement like this, and how I see this type of legislation working out, you have someone in a protest, they're wearing a mask, they strike a police officer, so you have the charge of assault on a police officer. Only at that point, where you have somebody who is wearing a mask during that commission of offense, could you then also allege this additional element of wearing a mask. And so if you look at the case law, there's a couple cases. There's a Supreme Court case called Apprendi, which came out in 2000, and then we followed that in 2003 in a case called McCleskey, which shows, I think it's really important because it kind of gets at some of the things that we've been talking about. When you allege this, when this is alleged in court, it has to be pled and proven to the jury. And that's the greatest protection we have, is the people of our communities ensuring that whatever the state brings, the state isn't in charge, the people are in charge. And so if someone punches a police officer, they're wearing a mask, that has to be pled and proven to the jury beyond a reasonable doubt before it is even in effect. And even at that case, so I think that, say if it's 10 years maximum sentence for striking a police officer, all this does, you allege that mask, it just raises the bar to now you can be sentenced up to 11 years, right? It just adds that additional year punishment on there. It doesn't mandate it. It still gives you all the other tools. So functionally, that's how it works. And I think it's important to do that because when you think about how that works, I know we talked about, could it be applied to something, some small crime? Functionally, it's never going to be because why? First, the prosecutor's not going to waste their time trying to allege something that is going to add an extra year on a sentence they're never going to get, right? They're going to use this only in these rare circumstances where we ensure that this person needs a little extra punishment. There needs to be some extra deterrence within that. So I think when you look at that, what I am most worried about and why I support this legislation, we see what is happening around our country, right? We see what is happening in Minneapolis these last couple of weeks, where people are wearing masks and they're committing crimes against police officers. How do you stop that? I am not one to say, well, you can't do anything. You can't do anything about it. I think our body has that ability to do that, has our ability to protect our police officers. And functionally, when you get to charging, there's so many things about charging, the people are in charge, right? The beautiful part about our society and our culture is 12 unbiased individuals sit on a jury and ultimately make determinations about the facts and about allegations. So I think this is just one tool in the tool belt. And on the intent piece, I was going to, the Representative Hostetler brought up, which I think is a good portion of this. The intent, when you add that, that's included, the intent, the mens rea is what they call it, is included in the original language of a crime, right? And so you have to have that intent to actually commit that crime, and this is just adding that within the mass portion. So, and I think when I read this, it says while committing that crime. So the intent's still there, it's just based on whatever that original crime piece is. So that's, I get some of the discussion on this, but I think it's a good piece of legislation that can really help some of these problems we're facing in our country.
Representative Scott, I think, was first, then Representative Gannon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a question for Representative Schertz.
Representative Schertz, would you yield to a question?
Yes, of course.
Thank you, Representative Schertz. So if this would only be used for these really bad crimes, I mean, why wouldn't you want to put something in there to protect from bad actors? Because there's bad actors in law enforcement, just like there's bad actors in every other part of society. And so why wouldn't you just specify crimes where someone's injured, or crimes where someone's murdered, these really bad crimes. What would you be opposed to that for?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Scott. I think it's a good question, right? Like, should we narrow that universe? I think the problem when you do that, first of all, are you going to capture every single little thing, right? And if you have a list, right, I think that's a different question. Are you going to capture everything? Because I think when you look at crimes, you don't always know. It's hard to determine how something's going to be committed. How something's going to be committed with a mask or something of that nature. That's my worry when you constrain it so much. And I think it would be different if you had, say, a mandatory minimum of 10 years. I think if you look at Congress Representative Tim Burchard out of Tennessee, who I enjoy, if you guys ever see him on Facebook, has this exact same piece of legislation in the U.S. Congress, and it's a 15-year sentence, right? It's a totally different ballgame. If you had something like that, where you have this big increase, I think that would be a different conversation. But when you have such a low, it's a year of an additional time, I think fully constraining it, I just don't think it's necessary in my opinion. But I recognize that concern on that.
Thank you.
Representative Gannon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And listening to the discussion, just taking the example of punching a police officer, which is a felony, and you're only going to give an extra year if that person has a mask on. Some thug goes up and beats up somebody that they have a beef with, and you're talking about an extra year. Seems to me that what everybody has been focusing on is more serious offenses than trespass, than disturbing the peace, a lot of our misdemeanors, petty theft, that kind of stuff. They've been focusing on really violent acts. Okay, well, I think that's terrible conduct to commit a violent act and then have a mask on when you're doing it, to murder somebody with a mask on, or to assault or battery. So I'm going to support the amendment, the going to general orders, and what I would like to hope that we have on general orders is a provision in here limiting this to felonies and make it 2 years or even more for wearing a mask and going up and punching a police officer. You're talking about 1 year? I'd give them 5.
Representative Hostetler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think by virtue of all the conversation we have had and can continue to have, I'm almost leaning towards Representative Ehart's outcome on this bill. I mean, objectively, a crime is a crime is a crime. The clothing or attire should not dictate or change the punishment. The crime itself and the status of the victim should always be the end dictate, if you will, of the sentence. We are setting a dangerous precedent, I think, with this bill. And I just think we need to really think hard about this. And I'd also request a roll call, please.
Roll call vote will be taken. Okay, this end of discussion, I'm going to take a privilege as chairman, and my name is also on this bill, and I was involved in the drafting. So this, again, this does not allow the wearing of masks. You have to commit the crime intentionally, whatever that crime may, before this would apply. And why would we apply on misdemeanors? Take example, the person who flies into our state to agitate and protest in our streets and then starts breaking some windows, but it's not at a felony level. Or does a misdemeanor battery on somebody else in the crowd. That's a misdemeanor. Now the judge may take a look at that or the jury and say, this person deserves more than this misdemeanor little fine, and the judge can say, I'm going to add 1 day, I can add a year to that. There are situations where we do want that. I want that when we have a really bad actor. I had a situation long ago when I was a young man of aggravated assault. It's a felony. This was a bad actor who we believed was going to harm people in the future in a bad way, twisted mind. The maximum we could get for aggravated assault was 5 years, and that's still the statute today, only 5 years for aggravated assault. They intended more harm. So This, if they were wearing a mask, would be able to at least add a year to that. So we have the felonies, we have the misdemeanors. I advocate for this bill. Let's see. Anyway, but we need to get to the vote because we have 3 other bills to go. So we are going to conclude and go to the vote. Oh, and my good attaché reminds you, when we do the voice vote individually, please turn on your mic so she can hear, because she listens to the recording later to see if you voted yes, no. When you're ready. Oh, as my good attaché keeps me in line, we have a substitute motion that we vote on first to send H489 to the amending order.
Chairman Skog.
No.
Vice Chair Alfieri.
No.
Representative Scott.
Yes.
Representative Ehart.
Yes.
Representative Erickson.
No.
Representative Garner.
No.
Representative Handy.
No.
Representative Hawkins.
Yes.
Representative Hill.
No.
Representative Hostetler.
Yes.
Representative Pohanka.
No.
Representative Schertz.
No.
Representative Hall.
No.
Representative Gannon.
Yes.
Representative Matthias.
Yes.
Representative Rubel.
Could have been the key vote, that last one.
Motion fails 6-9, so now we'll go to the original motion to send House Bill 489 to the floor with a due pass recommendation. When the attaché is ready.
Chairman Skog,
Yes.
Vice Chair Alfieri,
Yes.
Representative Scott.
No.
Representative Ehart.
No.
Representative Erickson.
Yes.
Representative Garner.
No.
Representative Handy.
Yes.
Representative Hawkins.
No.
Representative Hill.
Yes.
Representative Hostetler.
No.
Representative Pohanka.
Yes.
Representative Schertz.
Yes.
Representative Hall.
Yes.
Representative Gannon.
No.
Representative Matthias.
No.
Representative Rubel.
Motion carries 8-7. So committee, we start out united. Now on to the next bill. Thank you for the robust discussion. Next up is House Bill 491. Representative Erickson, when you're ready.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
is it possible to take a 5-minute break?
Yes, comfort break. Let's return at 15 minutes after the hour.